Hi, Artemisia. Good afternoon to you. How are you?
I'm so happy to be here.
I am so excited to have you on. This would be if not the first or the second time, this topic would be discussed on my podcast. It talks a lot about self-worth, and frankly, it's about knowing yourself, right? And one way through it is through your own sexuality, and it is a big taboo topic from where I come from right now, which is in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. But regardless, we're still going to dive deep into the topic. So I would like to introduce myself. My name is Nicolette. I am the creator for the podcast titled You're Worthless. Read that again, the juxtaposition of your very soul. Thank you very much for saying yes to be interviewed today. And as part of the ritual of my podcast, I'd like to read your introduction before we get right into our conversation. So, thank you. So, hello everyone. We have Artemisia Divine here with us, who is a sexual fantasy expert who teaches the world's leading sexperts the meaning of our sexual fantasies and how to bring them out of our heads and into our beds. Author of upcoming book, The Spirituality of Smut, The Surprising Wisdom of Sexual Fantasies. Now, Artemisia is a certified somatic sexologist, has a Bachelor of Arts in Anthropology, former sex worker, and a professional dominatrix. She's offering a groundbreaking new theory. Understand how stories work, and you understand why we have sexual fantasies and how to create powerful, real-life transformative sex experiences that satisfy the real desire behind the story symbolism. Wow, so much to unpack, Artemisia. Please, please, please. Yeah, I cannot wait to get you to pick your brain on this. But first, can you share with us what was it like growing up as an Artemisia Divine?
I grew up in the countryside, about an hour and a half north of Sydney, in a tiny little dot on the map that people don't even realise exists. Little tiny country town. And it was very, very religious. Like extremist religious.
Okay, there's a paradox there. Okay.
You think?
Yeah.
Yeah, with all sorts of different contrasting experiences growing up. Some of them pretty unpleasant and controlling, and some of them quite liberating because I'm a Gen X. Like when we were really little, parents didn't bother to look after you; they just let you run around the countryside wild. And there was like about 20 other people living in the valley with me, and like other children of other adults there. And so we would just run around like a little pack of piranhas, having a wild time. And being really independent, and then, cubby houses and swimming and inventing all sorts of secret societies and having our own unsupervised wild experiences, riding ponies without saddles, even though we'd never been taught to ride. Just like all of this wild stuff. And then by the time the adults realized we were humans and tried to make us behave the way we it was too late. We already had minds of our own.
Yeah. And this was how old?
Well, when they figured out that there was time to, it was about 12, I think, when they tried to get strict all of a sudden.
Too late.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, okay. What is your backstory actually like? How did you come about into the industry that you're in right now?
Well, as you just picked up, they started to be strict on us at about 12 because that's the age when sexual reproduction kicks in, and they tried to control us because that's the age that sexuality starts to become an issue.
Hormones are rampaging on Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. That's right. All of the things happen right at that stage. And so we went from this wild freedom and playfulness to this completely controlled, not allowed to even speak to even my best friend on the phone without my father listening in, just in case. Complete control because of... So that's going to make sex a really interesting topic to me then, isn't it? It's like, what?
The more you restrict me from learning about that subject, the more I want to know, like, why?
That's right. You say I can't have those cookies. I'm going to want those cookies.
Even more.
So, but I really was confused about why this force was so scary to everybody. Why was everybody so afraid of this thing called sex? And if I'm afraid of something, I go and poke it with a stick and see what happens. I wanted to find out. I wanted to find out what all the fuss was about. So I went on a whole lifetime journey of trying to understand what sex was, why people would treat me differently after I grew breasts, why were they behaving in these strange ways that were not always good, sometimes harmful. I didn't understand, and I wanted to understand. I did all sorts of things. I ended up working in a sex shop for women. I studied and read everything I could. I learnt from some of the world's leading sexperts. But the most powerful thing that I did was the deepest learning. The deepest, most profound learning came from 12 years as full-time sex worker and as a professional dominatrix, which is a BDSM provider. And you had a question before you could answer, which is, what is a sex? That's a big umbrella term, actually. So you'll get different answers from different people. But sex work, the way that what I was doing is I was offering penetrative sex and massage, erotic massage and spiritual sex and companionship. Basically, I was a person that people could come to and explore themselves in play.
Mm.
So people don't normally associate deep self-discovery with going into what they consider to be one of the worst things that a woman can do. But I found it was one of the most powerful things that I could do. It actually gave me the most power and incredible insight into the world, which is all about juxtaposition, like your worthless topic, right? So it's right on line with this you're worthy, you're worthless thing, because society, I remember going into a caving tour in the Blue Mountains, and I was with a large group of people being shown these different caves. And the guide brought us into a particular cave and said, actually, this cave was actually found 10 years earlier than the official historical records say. But no one admits it because it was a woman who found it. And she was the worst kind of woman could possibly be. What do you think that is, crowd? And everyone in the crowd, even though they were complete strangers, knew immediately the worst thing, the most worthless thing a woman could be is a prostitute. And yet, in juxtaposition, actually, not just for myself, but for my clients, I discovered the exact opposite. I discovered, what if I told you that people's sexual fantasies around being used actually can be doorway into having your needs deeply seen? What if I told you that sexual fantasies about being dominated can actually lead to feeling deeply powerful? What if I told you that sexual fantasies about being worthless can actually end up feeling absolutely deeply seen and worthy?
You have to answer all of that, like, because okay, I went into my own spiritual journey as well, and learned about the chakras, and there's a reason why the sacral chakra is the creativity point, right? Like, and I don't know, to me, not to me, I mean, what I've read so far, through sex, that's the most powerful exchange of energy, I think, between two souls. So when you say it is truly liberating, and I may not be very open or public about this, but I understand what you're saying, because I too am very curious naturally growing up. So I like learning, I like try things and read things and very curious. So I think it is apt to have you here. And I wanted to then go back to the things that you mentioned, like how for people who's like thinking the paradox, why is something that is so taboo can be so liberating for oneself?
This is my favorite topic. Okay. So you unleashed me.
Yeah, people say I have that effect. I'm glad. I'm going to put a caption on this though, 18 and above only. Hi, I'm Nierras, your host of the Your Wordless podcast. Now, if this real raw stories hit home, don't wait. Please follow, like, and subscribe my Spotify and YouTube. For bite-sized inspirational reels, follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. Don't wait. Your transformation starts today. Thank you and bye for now. But I mean, this is yeah, it is a podcast. So if you want to listen, you can listen. But if you don't want, it's okay. You can click off.
Well, it can be important for teenagers who are having sexual fantasies to understand where they're coming from as well. And I'm not going to go into particular details. So if it is important that people they're going to go looking. They're going to get confused about why they're having these, and they're going to go looking. So it's an important thing for them to find a safe, responsible place to get education around this sort of stuff.
That's right.
So sexual fantasies, let's first of all, what are they? Sexual fantasies are
things that you, may I?
Yeah, go for it.
My 2 cents. Things that you would want to do or do to other people or be done onto you or by yourself even.
Right. Okay. I would, yeah, no, you're on the right track.
Which society might think it's weird or like not acceptable because this is not the norm. And no, you shouldn't do that because that is impure or unholy.
Well, you made a very good start. That's excellent work. I would define sexual fantasies as any mental image that you draw on to become aroused. So there's 3 doorways into becoming aroused, like 3 main ones that I know of anyway. There may be there's more, but this is what I'm aware of. Is people tend to focus on their the first one is the sensate focused people. They focus on their senses in order to become excited. Like the quality of somebody giving them a lovely caressing touch, a beautiful soft kiss, the nice strength of the arms going around you and holding you well. The things that you smell, that you see, just going through your senses, the things you hear, that is something that can be exciting for people, that can turn them on. And there's a certain percentage of people who will focus mostly on that in order to become aroused. Then there's a certain percentage of people who will focus on their partner intently. It's the natural energy between the partners that is the most interesting thing. So it could be romantic looks or sweet talk or flirty tension or the drama of, I don't know, will they kiss me, won't they kiss me? Like the energy between them, or it could be, your nemesis as well. Sometimes people get very excited about the quality of attention that somebody who is their nemesis will give them, because let's face it, your nemesis gives you top quality attention. They're obsessed with you. And so that's the partner engaged people. And they will be focusing on that in order to become turned on. Then there's this third category of people who primarily focus on something that is going on in their mind in order to become aroused. So everybody can do all 3. All of us are capable of doing all 3, but we tend to default to 1 or 2 more than others. So the people who focus on fantasies, the mental image might be a full elaborate story of, oh my goodness, I'm being dominated in a dungeon by a billionaire CEO. Or
I can foresee us giggling all the way to this one. Me at least.
Yeah. Oh, why not? It's funny. Let's go for it. Or it could be a much smaller thing. It could be mental thought about, like, let's imagine that you're with your partner and you're hugging them. A memory from last week when they hugged you in a different way flashes to your mind, and that excites you. Like you've just focused on. And last week they were standing in a different body language and they had a different attitude towards you, and somehow it's more exciting than the way that they're doing it right now. So, or you could be imagining something that's happening this, date night this weekend. Like or getting yourself excited, imagining what might happen, and constructing entire scenarios. Even though on the surface it seems like it's real life, it's actually you making up a story about real life. So sexual fantasies are the psychological meaning making that's going on in the background of the moment, even when you're not necessarily conscious of it. Although you might be conscious of it, you might have all of these fantasies. And very common ones, lots of studies have been done now, thank goodness, about this very normal, very healthy part of us. In fact, everybody has fantasies, even if they're not aware of it. Everybody has fantasies. It's like dreams. If you know, some people don't think they have dreams, but they actually do.
That's true.
They're very, very common ones, so that you can know that you're normal and healthy. This is right across the board. And as far as I know, across different cultures as well, although there are different themes that come through culturally. There's domination and submission, where one person is more powerful than the other. That is a very big theme right across cultures. There's another one that is about threesomes or group sex. That's very normal. Cheating, even when you don't actually want to cheat in real life. You don't want to cheat at all, but you still might think about it and get excited. So that's a really important thing to notice. That just because you're fantasizing about it doesn't mean you want to or have to do it literally in order to get your needs met. Most people don't see how most of their fantasies. But
it's because sorry to cut you off.
Go for it.
I think it's because they're scared to confront that part of themselves. Because if they were to confront it, and it goes against the beliefs that they have. And so, for example, if they have a partner and their partner, maybe this has not been communicated earlier, or maybe they've been in that relationship for so long, they've just accepted that, okay, that sexual activities is just like this, and that, but the other party, or both even, maybe wanting to experience something more, but they just don't want to rock the boat, and
Right.
it's
You're pointing out something very important there, which is we can have needs that we do really want to live out, absolutely, but we don't necessarily want to live out all of the exact things in there that happen in your mind's eye. Because you might have in your mind's eye, it might be very exciting to have a non-consensual sex. Like it is already well documented that it is extremely common for people of all genders to have exciting sexual fantasies about non-consensual sex happening to them. And there's no one on the planet who wants to literally be raped.
that's true.
One.
Yeah.
Right? So why do we have these fantasies then if we don't want that? What function do they play? What did we get out of that? What's the benefit of it? And how on earth does that fit into spirituality?
The only thing I can think of right now is that you can have that, but it's just like, okay, maybe this is a super bad example. Like, well, you have the agreement and okay, non-consensual sex, but it's between us, but at any given times.
Mm-hmm.
That's, the parameters is there, it's placed because both are bound by the agreement, and this is what I can think of. And I'd like to hear more from you, and also about the spirituality side of it.
Sure. You're talking about consensual non-consent. So it's setting up a safe container.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. That's it. That's a new term. Consensual
Consensual non-consent
Consensual non-consent. Yes.
Because it is a good idea to actually create a really safe consensual container and play with the themes that are coming up in our fantasies. Because
That's
they're
right.
there for a reason and they're deeply powerful when we do that. But we need to be very deliberate about it and actually talk about it in depth first and understand what's happening and know which parts to bring to life and which parts we shouldn't. So as a sex worker, when people came through the door, they would say, me because I have blonde hair and I'm busty. They're thinking, oh, that's what's going to satisfy me. The way she looks is what's going to satisfy me. That's what I've been
The
fantasizing about.
mental images that's forming them.
I looked like their mental image. So they thought that was the part they needed to bring to life, literally. They didn't understand that that's not true. They were missing the point. Because they would go and they would book someone who was ideal, who was maybe a Barbie doll figure, and they would pay to have an experience with this worker, this sex worker. And then they'd say, she looked exactly how I thought she would. She was perfect. And yet I didn't feel what I thought I was going to feel. Why? What's going on? So I learned very quickly that people's sexual fantasies was not that in order to satisfy someone, it's not about literally living out what's inside of their mind's eye. It's about hearing the psychological mechanisms that it's creating and creating a real life consensual play experience together around that hits all of the right spots. And then suddenly they're with somebody who isn't a busty blonde, they're a small breasted brunette, and they're having the best time of their life.
The best time. Yeah.
So it's what people think will satisfy them is not necessarily what is actually going to satisfy them. And it's by taking a closer look at our sexual fantasies as stories that we understand the story mechanisms within them and we can start to really hear what they're trying to say. So I would like to introduce a concept here, which is my original concept. As far as I know, there's no one in the world who has concluded the same thing as I have and designed an entire system around it. But I'm looking at sexual fantasies through a different lens. Normally they're looked at through psychiatrists and psychologists look at them through the lens of what's wrong with your childhood and how it's linked to your trauma, because that's what therapists do. Or they look at them through the lens of, oh, they're perfectly normal and healthy, but we don't really understand why you have them. Or people might look at it through a sociological lens where they will go, oh, it's because women have been oppressed forever that they like being dominated. Well, that's the only way that they can access their sexuality and feel permission to access their sexuality. Now, all of these things can have elements of truth in them. I'm not saying they're wrong, but I don't think that's the reason that we have sexual fantasies. I think sexual fantasies exist because they change our state of consciousness from one thing to another. I think there's stories that ignite our body and our heart and our mind. I think they're the exact story that our ego needs to hear in order to let its guards down so that we can open to the vulnerability of pleasure and intimacy.
Just open the floodgates. Oh, yeah, that's true.
Right? So sex, this is not the first time that someone said this about sex. This is a worldwide thing that's already been said about sex. Like Tantra and all sorts of different kinds of sexuality traditions will talk about how sex can lead you to incredible ego dissolution experience where you can feel one with the other person and one with the universe. You can feel ecstasy. You can feel amazement. It can lead you home to feeling like you are your soul right here in this body, and an awareness of that. It can feel amazing. But normally people can't work out how sexual fantasies would do that, because sexual fantasies of threesomes and cheatings and being used, how is that leading to that?
Good for my spirituality.
How is that connected? So what I did is I took a closer look at each of my clients' fantasies and I started experimenting with them. I sit down on my red velvet couch I had a venue that was in Sydney, And it had lots of different themed rooms in it. Like there was a dungeon for the BDSM, and there was a sensual room for massage and more sensual experiences, and various different places that people have different experiences in there. And my clients actually named it the Divinery. They said, because when we come here, it feels like, because my name is Artemisia Divine, but because they said, when we come here, we feel like we're divining the erotic. We just came here because you're busty and blonde. But we left going, whoa, I just found my soul, man. And so, oh, bless them. So I'd sit them down on my red velvet couch, and I'd have a talk to them before we'd have any sort of interaction. I'd ask them all about their sexual fantasies. And I'd tell them, I'm not going to try and be your sexual fantasy. I'm going to be me. But I am going to listen and hear what you're saying, and you're going to be giving away all sorts of things you don't realize you're giving away. And I'm going to use that information to create experiences that get effects from you that delight me. And that world, okay.
Like a deer, stop at the headlights. Oh,
That's right. But
okay, did I sign up correctly now?
this is a little bit more than I thought it was. Okay.
Yeah.
So then, no, it was all consensual. They knew after a while I got really good at advertising and drawing people who wanted this sort of thing. But initially I didn't know. I was just figuring. But I would listen to their fantasies as though they were stories, because all stories are about transformation. All stories are about transformation. Your character starts somewhere, something happens, and they have a desire to get some sort of goal, and they have to somehow get there. And this whole story is about all of the obstacles they meet in the way in order to get there.
That's right.
You go and watch a romance. You don't watch a romance where they met and they fell in love and it's nice and that's the end. You don't watch that movie. You watch the movie knowing that they will get together in the end. So there's no mystery there, but you're fascinated in how they're going to overcome all of the obstacles that get in the way for them to get together. This is how stories work. Sexual fantasies are the same, but they're stories designed specifically to help your ego get past its obstacles so that it can let go and you can just connect. You can lose yourself in the moment and just feel like you've connected to the whole of yourself with someone else, and sometimes even life itself. You can go so deeply. But if you're going to get those barriers down, you have to include them in the story. You can't leave them out of the story. You have to include them in. So if you're feeling, oh my goodness, my lover is giving me lots of lovely touch and they're giving me lots of attention and it feels really good and I just want to lose myself in this moment, but I'm scared I'm taking up too much time. Because it's my turn, I should stop it and give back to them now. I'm being too selfish. I'm taking up too much space. I can't let go. I can't surrender. And, do they really want to be here doing this with me? Am I worthy of this much pleasure? Am I? And if they're just all being nice to you about it, maybe your psyche won't believe it, because you've had plenty of people be polite to you and not mean it all through the whole time. So there still is niggling doubt going, what's going on? But then if the fantasy is no, they're going to tie you up and they're not going to stop until they're done using you for their pleasure, which just happens to magically be your pleasure exactly the way you want it.
Juxtaposition. Hello.
Then you're going to believe it. You're going to be, they do want to be here. This is they're here for them. They're being selfish. They're using me. Of course their needs are being met. I don't have to look after them. They've looked after them themselves. Now I can just surrender to sensation. Now I can just receive. And that's when you would let go. You seeing the logic of how this works?
Yeah. I get everybody listening to this right now. Try that. I'm going to try that tonight or whenever they're listening to this. But
yeah. Well, you need some few skills and some good conversations before and afterwards in order to make that safe.
That's true.
Right?
That's true.
because one person's idea of using is not the same as another person's. And you think if you don't communicate enough detail, it ends up feeling awful, because you have to include what your ego fears and the exact antidote to that fear for that person, not for you, for that person. So it has to be the poison, the thing their ego fears, plus the exact antidote. That's what creates the alchemical reaction, and you end up having an experience of feeling, of looking on the outside like you're being used, but actually you're the center of attention because you just got all of your needs met for as long as you could possibly.
Yeah. I love how you just included that for as long as you can possibly take. Oh gosh, Artemisia, I think you are the one for this. Like, I am enjoying this right now. Becoming a podcast host was a natural extension of my second act. And after spending 15 years in the corporate world, I've transitioned to helping individuals overcome challenges like navigating tough relationships, career burnout, and aligning their mission with their soul's calling. By certifying as an RTT hypnotherapist and a lifestyle coach, I've made it my mission to empower people to recreate the life they deserve and building a supportive community through my podcast. Now, let me ask, are you facing challenges like struggling to reprogram your mind to attract wealth, weight issues that feel like a constant yo-yo, insomnia or restless nights from daily worries, or just a lack of confidence in public speaking? If the answer is yes, visit www.thenierrasholisticlifestyle.com and grab a free hypnosis audio of these common struggles. It's a sneak peek into how my coaching works. Are you feeling shy? Don't be, because I'm as real as it gets. Let's connect on Instagram and LinkedIn and start your transformation today.
Good. It does take some skills though, so do make sure that if you want to jump into trying to bring your fantasies to life, actually take the time to learn how to actually notice what you need and communicate them together. So, and that's a really intimate thing to do. Most people seriously have never told their partner about their sexual fantasies. So they're pretty terrified to even bring that conversation up and have a clear conversation around it. But that's necessary, or you're not going to get your needs met. If you just tell your partner, please just use me, they're going to just use you, and they're going to take from you what they want, which is logically what you wanted to receive. So you've got the poison and no antidote. That's not going to create the transformation that the story was telling in your mind. That's going to just lead to poison.
So it's also about you being able to, it's a dance of two, right? The partner, I don't know if it's same sex or different sexes, making the other feel safe that it is okay to explore the sexual fantasies, and then that will let them put their guards down and be able to communicate and try certain things to live out their fantasies. Because, like I mentioned earlier, if it's like a partner, a couple who've been in the relationship for a while, they've become so accustomed to certain things done a certain way, and maybe exploring this would be a bit icky or maybe shy, and that's why they decide to perhaps explore with somebody else, and that's when you call it cheating, because there's no emotional. Again, that's a juxtaposition, right? You should. So I don't know. In your opinion, like, for you to live out your fantasies, do you need that emotional connection, or you don't have?
No, this was working as a sex worker, complete stranger who had no interest in spirituality whatsoever, came through the door, and I used these methods, and they would say things quite literally like, what the hell was that? I've never felt this way before. I didn't even know I could feel this way. Why is this? And oh my goodness, I feel like I'm on drugs, except the opposite of drugs, because I feel like I'm the most real I've ever been. This is who I always was, and never was trying and didn't know how to get to. I feel like I'm the real me now. What just happened? So you don't actually need romantic connection. No gender does. There's a beautiful book that's just been put out by a friend of mine called Dr. Hilary Caldwell. She's just put out a book called Slutdom, which is about women who purchase sex. So women who go and hire sex workers for their own needs and how they're getting their needs met. And actually, women don't need romance either. Have the right safety and right psychological container to hold it. That's what you really want. That's what you really need in order to be able to let go. That's pretty fascinating.
And it's big again. And then I had a different thought. Like, if women can satisfy themselves just by themselves, I mean,
I do. Let's say I don't.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like, why do we need the other partner? Why do we need a partner then?
We don't. And isn't that interesting?
All right. I mean, that's a question, but an answer by itself. So it's like.
So seriously, I don't need a partner because I can get myself into
because
ecstatic oneness with the universe all by myself using these techniques. Right?
Yes.
Which means I don't need, like my heart feels as big as the sun. I feel like in love with the whole universe. It feels extraordinary. I can be crying with joy as I'm orgasming. It's just amazing. Even I know how to follow this way there. But that's amazing because then if I want to be in a relationship with someone else and I want to share it with someone else, I don't need them to fulfill me. I'm sharing myself with them. And that's an entirely different place to have a love affair.
Oh my God. Amazing. I love it. I might have you on for my second season. And I also would like to collaborate with you on certain things that I want to do, like some retreat or projects. So, and I know you're collaborating with people. I don't have the details worked out yet, but maybe sometime next year. So.
That's an exciting prospect.
Yeah. Just stay tuned. I would be reaching out to you. I love it.
Oh, wonderful. Okay.
I have a few more questions, Artemisia, and then we can close this off because, yeah. Okay. Now you mentioned spiritual sex can include thorns as well as the roses. What do you mean by that?
Well, just as I said before, it needs to include the poison and the antidote. Sex is all about actually overcoming paradoxes. That can be our next conversation. There's 3 paradoxes inherent to sex that sexual fantasies resolve. But you have to include the barriers, the things that are in the way, the obstacles in the way, in order to be able to transform them. You can't transform something that's not included. So it has to be, whatever it is that your ego fears has to be included. And the thing that the ego fears the most is vulnerability. Egos are against all forms of vulnerability, ever, always.
I got a reality check right there because, I was talking to a friend today and we were kind of talking about, not about this topic, but somewhere along those lines. It was that, and then he pointed out something very, very clear and very jarring to me. It's like, why are you afraid of saying this? Is it because you're trying to say something out loud because you're hoping it doesn't happen? No. Oh my God. And I said, okay, what are you? Are you a psychic or are you doing a therapy on me right now? And it was like, okay, we're not going to do this anymore. But then, it's an interesting thing. And I think this conversation can be steered to, maybe it's more on relationship or could be sexual fantasies, a worthiness where you're, what do you call this? People are not, I lost my train of thought. I was thinking about that.
It happens to the best of us.
Oh my gosh. Oh, it'll come back to me.
That's okay.
Yeah.
It was around vulnerability, how egos are afraid of all forms of vulnerability. And that's actually a normal, healthy ego response, is afraid of vulnerability, because the whole job of an ego is
exactly. And then because you want to protect, and that's why you're self-sabotaging, where it could be your greatest experience with a person or with a person usually, because with yourself, you're okay. I want to explore this, right?
Yeah.
So
there's always a push-pull. You're right. Think about when you're sitting in a cafe and you see a really cute person and you're just drawn to them. Somehow they're magnetic and you want to ask them on a date. And suddenly the whole world's disappeared. You can only think about them, even though you're studiously looking at your cappuccino and refusing to look at them in case they notice that you're looking at them.
yeah,
Because that would be too vulnerable.
yes, because yeah.
Right. So you can feel yourself pretending not to look because, oh no, if they know I like them, that's vulnerable. They might reject me. They might use it against me.
Oh, it's that
It might be
fear of
embarrassing.
rejection.
All of this stuff, all of it. Like you might lose face in front of everybody. You might lose your social status. All of these things. It's like the ego that's the ego's job, is to protect your self-identity, your self-worth, and your social status. Its whole job is to do that. And so it's always against you going and taking the risk to ask that person on a date. It will resist. It will resist like crazy. But there's another part of you that creates desires, right? And it whispers in your ear as you're afraid of them. Well, let's include your fear in the fantasy and resolve it then, shall we? And make it okay. And maybe you'll have this fantasy of a robber coming in and going to steal things from the cash register, but somehow you suddenly magically know all of the martial arts in the world and save them from the robber. And then they just like, you're so cool. Can I have your number? And they ask you out and you don't feel vulnerable anymore because you feel powerful. Like it's resolved all of the issues for you.
And this is why the mind is such a powerful organ. Powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, but we wouldn't actually want a real robber to come in order for you to be able to safely ask someone on a date. That's not the point. But we would learn from the story that your mind made up and work out which parts of that to bring to life and how to navigate that. So that's where my work is.
Yeah, and I think it's also about, because the images that you have or the thoughts that you're thinking of are raw and they're not polished. So they come to people like yourself to, navigate those things and then play them out safely.
Sure.
To the best of,
Yeah.
For their benefit.
Yeah. And then you create all sorts of consensual play that can and you can live out all sorts of taboo things in safe ways where no one gets hurt. And it transforms your consciousness so that you can connect and enter this place together. It's wonderful. It's so much fun and play.
It's a good time to be alive. It's such a beautiful thing to be alive, right?
So if anyone wants to just even begin this journey, you can do that by going to fantasyis.com. And I've got a little freebie there, and it's a little exercise where you can start to understand your own narrative, what does your mind do in order to create the right risk and safety for you to be able to access these places inside of yourself. And the exercise is, you don't have to tell anyone your fantasies. You're perfectly safe. It's not explicit, but it's called the celeb swoon technique. So you'll get picked, maybe do a Google search of a celebrity that you find really particularly swoon-worthy. Or if you don't find any celebrities attractive, go on a dating site and see who you find you're attracted to. And they've normally got 4 or 5 different pictures of themselves doing different things. And you'll look at them and you'll say, in all of them, they're a busty blonde. So I thought it was the busty blondness that was exciting to me. And yet that picture I'm not that attracted to, and that one I'm much more attracted to. Why? It's the same person. It looks exactly the same. Why? And this exercise on myfantasyis.com will take you through what to look for to become aware of what was actually happening psychologically for you, to be able to feel drawn to that particular person.
I love it. Wow. Okay, 2 more questions, Artemisia. What is next for you?
What is next for me? Well, I've got to get this book out, which is The Spirituality of Smut, The Surprising Wisdom of Sexual Fantasies. I was just talking to my editor this morning about deadlines and all of the things. And I'm looking also to possibly make a sort of like an oracle or a tarot deck that goes with it so that you can explore your,
Yes.
like, it's
All for it.
because I make all sorts of art pictures and I have no place to put them. So, oh my goodness, I can combine all my loves and make this thing. So I might do that as well. But I've just recently started running monthly seminars for people because I normally teach some of the elite practitioners of the world and psychologists and all sorts of people. Recently, a couple of Christian ministers and people from all religions come and learn this. It's really useful information, no matter what your belief system is. Suddenly this is like, oh, wow, now I've got this. Now I've got a framework of understanding this thing. But normally I can only take a handful of people in that training at a time, really deep. And it's like at least 6 months of me one-on-one working with them, and they go deep into their own psyche and they learn all sorts of things about themselves. It's super fun. But not everyone can do that. So I've started teaching monthly seminars where people can come along and just learn a specific aspect of the erotic psyche and of how sexual fantasies work. We put a magnifying glass over a specific thing. So we might focus on a particular kind of fantasy, or look at how emotional aphrodisiacs work, or how does power work, or there's going to be all sorts of different things that are there. So that's also something to keep an eye out for as well.
I love it. Artemisia, what is your heart's greatest wish?
My heart's greatest wish is for the world to finally realize that they can trust their desire. Because it is mistrusting desire that's creating it to mistrust.
Oh, wow. I love that. That's like, oh, yeah, that thing. Okay. Now, if you could create a quote right now for you to leave to the audience listening and the world as your legacy, what would it be?
If I could create a what?
A quote.
A quote? Put me on the spot. Goodness me. The pressure. Goodness me. Well, okay. Well, sexual fantasies are the exact story that our ego needs to hear in order to let its guards down so we can access connection, pleasure, and oneness. Come back home to ourselves.
Beautiful. Thank you. So, how can people reach out to you?
Okay, so if you're not interested in the freebie, you can find me on my website, which is my name, artemisiadivine.com. And there's a whole lot of blogs and all sorts of things there. I do recommend you join the newsletter because anything to do with sexuality is algorithm muted on all social media channels. So even if you add me on social media, you still might not see my posts. It's really worthwhile actually joining the newsletter, and I'm really generous on the newsletter. I give away lots of information about how the erotic psyche works. You are.
And there you have it, guys. You heard it from the person herself, Artemisia Divine, here with us. Before we close up, I'd like to thank you personally, Artemisia, for the work that you're doing for the world and for advancing every step of the way despite challenges, creating trails for those that will come after you. For our listeners, this has been that one podcast with that controversial name, You're Worthless. Read that again, the juxtaposition of your very soul. Now, if you find yourself thinking that you are worthless, you're probably not alone. But more importantly, ask yourself a level deeper. If I'm worthless, then why the heck am I here? It is because your soul have chosen to be here energetically, all the way from the ethers, and for that reason itself, you are worthy and you are enough. This has been Artemisia Divine, your guest of the day, and Nierras, your host, signing off. Thank you so much, Artemisia.
Thank you.